Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota, announcing he will not be seeking re-election after the mounting pressure that came over the last couple weeks on the fraud scandal that has broken out in Minnesota, where it looked like what went from $1 billion fraud went upwards of $9 billion. We saw the YouTubers who were going to some of those daycare and learning centers, learning centers, and
leering centers.
Oh, so it wasn't even, a leering center. And really, that pressure, which shows you the power of independent journalism, shows you the power of what's going on here, pressured Tim Walz to not step down, but to wrap up his time in office. This is after he announced he was going to be making a third-term run, something that was kind of unheard of, even in Minnesota. So, big moment there, a big moment for a lot of people. This shows you that these kind of shows, this kind of pressure does work. Change can happen. Of course, we'll see where things go from here. They'll blame you. They'll blame the independent journalists. They'll blame President Trump and the administration. But of course, we know how this all plays out, which is there has to be a lot of pressure. I mean, allegedly, let's say, a lot of pressure from some people on the inside for this to have been the decision that he made. Not something anyone who's really in power wants to do.
And when you read the statement from Tim Walz, it's 4 pages long. It's kind of meandering, blaming just about everybody but himself for what has going on. And as you mentioned, that there has to be a lot of internal pressure. Clearly, polling numbers or something came back and said, listen, you got to just get out. Because he goes from blaming Donald Trump in Washington, people in St. Paul, online. He says it's political gamesmanship from Republicans, and no one has done more than he has on fighting fraud, but yet then there's YouTubers. Like, it literally just goes all over the place and says, so I'll let others worry about the election and I'll focus on work. So he's trying to save face when clearly the writing was on the wall as far as where the election was going to go, but it still shows that he's not willing to take responsibility for what was going on. The entire time he had kept saying, I kept asking for more resources from the legislature. I kept asking for more things, but never really just owned it and took responsibility for this is ballooned to be one of the worst fraud scandals ever. I'm going to fix it. I'm going to end it. And so I think that probably for many in the state was enough. And if they were doing internal polling, they were looking at things, I'm sure his consultants were like, you've got to get out of this race. You are not going to be the first third-term Minnesota governor in the modern era.
And giving it a lot of time, really. I mean,
right.
You think about it, we're pretty much a year away, 11 months away from the election for Tim Walz. So it's giving enough time for somebody to get their act together, because I'm sure that Democrats were not looking at primarying him. That probably was not happening. Right. So there's probably not even an infrastructure set up to who will take his place. I'm sure obviously there are always someone in politics angling, but this gives them enough time to get something together in Minnesota.
They're even saying the Senator, Amy Klobuchar, is considering running for governor, going back home. And I feel like that type of a move would be a smart one for the party. Someone who has won many terms in the Senate, would be seen as kind of a stable familiar name, would probably be able to do well there coming out of something like this where the incumbent governor is having to step away.
This is happening again. He made this statement. The statements came out. The statements were pretty clear, which is, I'm going to blame everybody else. And it's not really about the fraud. We know the fraud's bad. We got to investigate the fraud. It's really, I don't want to feel like I'm distracted from running this state. A lot of fluff.
The statement itself, which was 4 pages long, could have been read equally as, I'm still running, you can't stop me. Because he says things like, I cannot abide the actions of the political leadership in Washington, these opportunists who are willing to hurt our people to score a few cheap points. They and their allies have no intention of helping us solve the problem and every intention of profiting off of it. Doesn't make any sense right there. But then he goes, which brings me to this. 2026 is an election year, and election years have a way of ramping up the politics at a time when we simply can't afford more politics. Goes on to say, so I've decided to step out of the race and let others worry about the election while I focus on the work. It's an interesting statement, as you said, because he is blaming everyone but himself for the loose controls over their programs, which led to historic fraud. The U.S. attorney, assistant U.S. attorney in Minnesota, said it was at an industrial scale. It made him question everything he knew about the state of Minnesota. That's not someone trying to profit off of political points here. That's the assistant U.S. attorney. And yet he's trying to have it both ways. We're saying, so I'm going to finish my term here really strong, doing the work of the Minnesotans that you elected me to do here, but I'm not even going to worry about these political things. In reality, his consultant said, don't end up being the Joe Biden of Minnesota. Don't be the guy who, as these stories kept coming out, made it impossible for you to win, and you drop out too late or you lose and you allow a Republican to win. I guarantee you a conversation like that was had between Tim Walz and his campaign manager about not being the Joe Biden of Minnesota. He's already lived through that, what it looks like when you are short time frame to try and mount a campaign. So maybe that was what convinced him.
I don't want to lead anyone astray and say that I think he's going to be indicted for this fraud. I'm not saying that they're not going to do a good job looking into it. I think you have a top-notch FBI now who is really breaking things down. So if there is something there, I'm not going to be shocked if they find the accountability there, Will. But I also don't want to pretend to lead people down a road which could lead to something like that.
Based off what we're seeing publicly, is there some alleged crime that Tim Walz has committed? Not that I've seen.
There's negligence.
Right. Gross negligence of running your state is, he's getting the consequences for that. He will no longer be the governor because he will not be seeking reelection.
And leaving not in a way anyone wants to leave. Leaving in a way where you have egg on your face, not unlike Joe Biden, leaving in a way where the American people essentially pre-rejected you before you had time to even lose the election or to not fulfill your duties there. They decided it's not worth your time.
As you said, we do need to be careful that just being awful at your job and allowing people to completely defraud your state doesn't necessarily mean you go to prison, where failed politicians don't always go to jail just because they failed at their job. That would turn us into more of a Venezuela, Latin American style dictatorship where they didn't like you, they throw you in prison. So I don't think he's done a good job, but I haven't seen directly anyone alleging that he was benefiting off the fraud.